Hey guys, welcome back. Close your eyes for a second and imagine this. Sleep itself is forbidden. A powerful emperor, obsessed with control, banned sleep across his entire empire. Those who dared to rest never woke up again. But sleep cannot be stopped forever. And when nature fights back, the consequences are darker than you can imagine. So dim the lights, stay completely silent, and let yourself be carried into the chilling story of the emperor who banned sleep and how it ended. The empire had always been a place of order. Its streets lined with marble, its markets bustling with voices that echoed off towering spires. But in recent months, a shadow had begun to creep over the land, an invisible darkness that lingered in every whispered rumor, every anxious glance. Sleep, once a natural refuge, had become the most dangerous act a citizen could commit. It began subtly. The emperor, known to his people as Valerius Aurelius, had always been an enigma. Scholars praised his intellect, generals feared his ruthlessness, and the common folk whispered about his obsidian black eyes that seemed to pierce through the soul. No one had ever dared to challenge him openly. Yet, beneath his imperial robes and golden insignia, there simmered an obsession unlike any the empire had known. Hatred for the very thing that brought solace to the mortal mind, sleep. The decree came suddenly, as decrees often did. A royal messenger rode through the streets on a pale horse, the clatter of hooves cutting through the pre-dawn stillness. In the grand plazas, citizens gathered, eyes wide, ears straining, as the messenger's voice echoed by the command of Emperor Valerius. From this day forth, no citizen of this empire shall sleep. To do so shall be considered treason, punishable by death. At first, many thought it a cruel jest, a twisted experiment, or a misinterpretation. But the first executions confirmed the reality. A young servant, found slumped over in a momentary lapse, was dragged from his bed and publicly tried. His screams echoed long after the sword fell. Fear rippled through every street, every home. Parents clutched their children. Lovers held each other tighter. Even the most devout citizens could not pray away the horror. The emperor himself appeared rarely in public, but when he did, he radiated an intensity that made the air feel thick and heavy. His eyes, unnervingly sharp, scanned the crowd as if he could see every secret thought, every flicker of defiance. Rumors spread that he did not sleep himself, that he had discovered some arcane method of sustaining consciousness indefinitely, and that his mind was sharper, more dangerous because of it. The palace became a fortress of whispered terror. Only those who pledged absolute loyalty were permitted within its walls, and even then, they were subject to relentless scrutiny. Servants were trained to anticipate his slightest whim, to read his moods as if they were weather patterns, to remain awake at all hours, lest they be accused of clandestine rest. Candles burned day and night, casting flickering shadows across walls that seemed alive with secrets. Among the citizens, a quiet resistance began to form, though it was fragile, scattered, and almost invisible. In dimly lit taverns, in shadowed alleyways, whispers of rebellion stirred. People traded tips, how to stay awake longer, what herbs to drink, what chants might help stave off the creeping pull of unconsciousness. Fear and desperation made them invent methods their ancestors would have considered unnatural. Yet for all their ingenuity, there was one immutable truth. The human body, no matter how determined, craves sleep, and sleep had become a crime. It was during one of these secret gatherings that Alara first felt the true depth of the Emperor's cruelty. She was a scholar's daughter, intelligent and curious, and she had been drawn into the network of those who dared to defy the decree in small ways. They met in an abandoned watchtower at the edge of the city, where the wind howled through broken windows and the moonlight painted the floor in pale silver. "We can't keep going like this," whispered one man, his voice ragged with exhaustion. "Even the herbs won't work forever. The guards will catch us. If we sleep, we die. If we stay awake, we live, but only barely. The Emperor is testing us, yes, but he underestimates what desperation can do to a mind." She had learned the hard way. Nights without sleep stretched endlessly, time becoming fluid and surreal. Shadows took shapes of monsters in the corners of her vision. Sounds seemed louder, more threatening. She sometimes caught herself talking to empty walls, imagining conversations with ghosts. The world had transformed into a place where the very act of closing one's eyes was rebellion, and rebellion was punishable by death. Meanwhile, Emperor Valerius retreated deeper into his obsession. Reports reached him daily of citizens collapsing from exhaustion, of strange hallucinations spreading through the streets, of whispers about secret gatherings that dared defy his decree. And yet, he remained unmoved, as if the suffering of millions were little more than background noise to the symphony of his own genius. In the dead of night, Valerius would walk the palace halls alone, listening to the faint echoes of restless dreams that he had forbidden. He studied maps of the city, charts of sleep cycles, records of deaths, and diaries seized from those caught in their private moments of unconsciousness. Each account was a puzzle piece, and he believed that by understanding sleep, by mastering it, he could conquer not just the mind, but the very essence of life itself. Yet even he was not immune. Rumors spread that he, too, had begun to see things that were not their shapes, that moved in the shadows, whispers that spoke secrets no human should hear. He dismissed them publicly, yet in the privacy of his chambers, he felt their insidious touch. The mind, when deprived of sleep, becomes a mirror for its own fears, and Valerius, for all his power and intellect, was beginning to realize that obsession has a price. Alara's world, too, was unraveling. The herbs that kept her awake sometimes caused vivid hallucinations, streets bending impossibly, voices of the dead calling her name. She began to see patterns in the darkness, symbols in the cracks of the walls, shadows moving independently of their objects. Fear and fascination entwined, creating a strange exhilaration, a feeling that she was glimpsing something profound, terrifying, and forbidden. It was during one particularly long night, as the city slept in fractured fear, that she found herself standing before the gates of the imperial palace. Her heart pounded with a mixture of dread and resolve. Somewhere inside, the emperor awaited, the architect of this relentless nightmare. If she was discovered, it would mean death. If she succeeded, perhaps she could understand what drove him, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to survive this cruel world. The guards were relentless. Their eyes glowed faintly under the torchlight, a pale reflection of the emperor's unyielding gaze. Alara moved like a shadow, careful to blend with the darkness, every step a calculation, every breath a risk. The closer she got to the inner sanctum, the more she felt the oppressive weight of the palace, the heavy, suffocating sense that the building itself was alive, watching, judging, feeding on fear. Inside, the emperor stood by a vast window, looking out over the city. The moonlight glinted off his crown, illuminating the sharp angles of his face. Valerius seemed almost otherworldly in his stillness, a man who had transcended the natural laws that governed the rest of humanity. He did not turn, he did not speak, and yet Elara felt the weight of his mind pressing down on her, probing, analyzing, calculating. And then a whisper of realization struck her. The emperor was not merely cruel, nor merely obsessed. He was afraid. The very thing he sought to control, sleep, was something he could not master completely. And in that fear, she saw a vulnerability, a glimmer of hope, hidden beneath the veneer of tyranny. But hope, she quickly understood, was a dangerous thing in a world where closing your eyes meant death. Night after night, the city became a canvas of hallucination and terror. Citizens moved like ghosts, caught in the eternal tug-of-war between exhaustion and survival. Whispered legends began to circulate that those who succumbed to sleep were not simply dead, but trapped in a liminal world of endless torment, their minds caught between reality and nightmare. Some said they could hear the screams of the fallen if they listened too closely. Others swore that shadows of the sleeping walked the streets at midnight, searching for the living. Elara realized, with a cold clarity, that survival required more than vigilance. It required understanding. The emperor's obsession was a key, a twisted, dangerous key that might unlock not only the secrets of sleep, but the secrets of the human mind itself. And if she could uncover it, perhaps she could turn the nightmare to her advantage. The wind howled through the palace corridors as she moved closer to the emperor's private chamber. Every step carried the weight of potential discovery. Every breath was a silent prayer. The faint echo of her heartbeat filled her ears, a reminder that even in a city gripped by fear, the human spirit could persist, fragile but defiant. And so, as the city slept, or rather, as it was forced to remain awake, Elara prepared to step into the very heart of the darkness. She did not yet know what awaited her behind the massive doors of the emperor's chamber, nor did she know the extent of the horrors that had been unleashed by his decree. But one thing was certain: the world would never be the same again. Elara's hand trembled as she pushed open the massive doors of the emperor's inner chamber. The air inside was thick and suffocating, carrying a faint metallic temps that made her stomach churn. Shadows danced across the walls from a single flickering lantern, elongating and twisting in ways that defied reason. She took a tentative step forward, every sense on high alert. Valerius was there, standing motionless, framed against the enormous window that overlooked the city. Moonlight bathed his figure in pale silver, casting the sharp edges of his face into something almost inhuman. His eyes, dark and unyielding, fixed on her as though he had been expecting her arrival. "Curious, aren't we?" His voice was soft, but it carried a weight that made Elara's chest tighten. "You walk into the heart of danger willingly. Most would flee long before reaching this point." "I seek understanding," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I seek to know why you have done this, why you've cursed your own people." Valerius turned slowly, the flickering light glinting off the golden embroidery of his robes. "Cursed, no. I have awakened them. Humanity drifts in comfort, lulled by sleep, shackled by weakness. I offer clarity, vigilance, transcendence. Only the foolish cling to dreams, while the world moves on without them." Elara swallowed hard, trying to steady her racing mind. "You call it transcendence, but people are dying. their minds unraveling. You're creating monsters out of your own citizens. He smiled faintly, but it was not a smile that brought warmth. It was a predator's expression, calculating and cold. Monsters, perhaps, but the world has always feared monsters. And yet, here I am, shaping the future, one sleepless soul at a time. As she spoke, a distant sound reached them, a faint, eerie whisper echoing through the palace corridors, almost like a chorus of voices in unison, yet each distinct. Ilara froze, recognizing the unmistakable tones of those who had succumbed to exhaustion, their minds trapped between consciousness and dream, somewhere between reality and nightmare. Valerius's gaze followed hers. Ah, you hear them, the forsaken, the lost. They exist now in a realm beyond your comprehension, yet their presence is undeniable. This is the cost of awakening, Ilara. Do you fear it? She did. She feared it deeply. But fear was only part of her strength. Curiosity, defiance, and determination pushed her forward. If you're right, she said slowly, then perhaps you don't fully control it either. Perhaps you're as trapped as they are. His expression darkened. Trapped? No, I have mastered what no one else dares to. But mastery comes with vigilance, and vigilance is eternal. He paused, and for a moment she saw a flicker of something. Vulnerability, loneliness, perhaps even terror. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the cold, unyielding mask of the Emperor. Ilara stepped closer, and yet even the most vigilant falter. Humans cannot endure endless nights without consequences. Madness will claim them. You will see it soon. You can't escape the laws of nature, Valerius, no matter how clever you are. He tilted his head slightly, considering her words. Ah, but the mind is a malleable thing. Observe, and you will see that I am molding it, shaping it into something greater. Sleeplessness is a crucible, a test. Only the worthy survive, and only the extraordinary ascend. A sudden noise interrupted them, a soft scraping from behind the shadows. Ilara's heart leaped into her throat. Both of them turned, but there was nothing. Only the oppressive darkness, the faint flicker of the lantern, and the faint hum of the city below. You feel it too, don't you? She whispered. The walls, the corridors, they are alive with the echoes of those who cannot sleep. Their suffering, their desperation, it permeates everything. You've created a nightmare beyond your imagination. Valerius smiled, more genuinely this time, a thin curl of lips that hinted at both pride and madness. I am aware. That is why it fascinates me. The human mind, pushed to its limits, reveals itself in ways you cannot yet fathom. You will see it soon, Ilara, tonight. You will witness it firsthand. He turned abruptly and moved toward a hidden panel in the wall. With a barely audible click, a door slid open, revealing a narrow spiral staircase descending into the depths beneath the palace. A cold draft seeped out, carrying with it a smell of damp earth and decay. This way, Valerius said, gesturing for her to follow. If you wish to understand, you must descend into the heart of sleeplessness itself. There, you will see what happens when humanity is stripped of its most sacred refuge. Ilara hesitated for a fraction of a second, then followed. Each step downward made her pulse quicken. The darkness closed in, swallowing the faint lantern light. Shadows seemed to move independently, stretching and contorting as if alive. The air grew heavier, thicker, and every breath felt like inhaling liquid fear. As they reached the bottom, a vast chamber unfolded before her eyes, a place she could never have imagined. The walls were lined with countless alcoves, each holding a figure slumped in unnatural positions. Their eyes were open, wide and unblinking, staring into nothingness. Some murmured incoherently, while others clawed at the air as if trying to grasp an invisible reality. Their skin was pale, almost translucent, and veins ran visibly under the surface. Ilara's stomach churned. "The sleepers," she whispered. "They're still alive." Valerius nodded. "Alive, yes. Conscious, yes, but trapped. Their minds are dissolving, their sanity slipping. Each one is a fragment of what could have been, a testament to what I am attempting to create." She took a tentative step forward, and one of the figures, a man with hollow eyes and tremulous lips, whispered her name. Her blood ran cold. It was impossible. How could he know her name? Yet the sound came from somewhere deep inside the chamber, resonating with her very soul. Valerius watched silently. "They sense you because you are awake, and because you are alive. You, too, are a part of this experiment, whether you understand it or not." Suddenly, a scream tore through the chamber, a sound of pure, unfiltered terror that made Ilara stagger back. The figure in the corner had convulsed violently, veins bulging, eyes rolling into the back of its head. The sound echoed, bounced off the walls, and seemed to seep into her mind. She stumbled, clutching her head as visions flashed before her. Streets filled with screaming citizens, empty cradles where children had fallen asleep and never awoken, shadows creeping along the palace walls, and the emperor's cold, unwavering gaze. Valerius stepped closer, his voice calm, almost tender. "Do not fear what you see, Ilara. Fear is only the first stage of awakening. You must understand it. Only then can you endure. Only then can you truly see the truth of what sleeplessness reveals." She tried to focus, to steady herself, but the hallucinations were relentless. Time lost all meaning. Moments stretched into eternity. The chamber seemed to breathe around her, the walls pulsating with a life of their own. The whispers grew louder, forming words that promised pain, revelation, and impossible knowledge. "Ilara." The voice of the emperor was both near and far, disembodied yet undeniable. "Do you understand now? The mind, when deprived of its sanctuary, reveals the hidden threads of existence. It bends, it fractures, it opens doors to truths no dream could ever contain." Her heart pounded. "And the people, the city, what becomes of them?" He smiled thinly, eyes glinting. "They are the crucible. They are the proof. And soon you will see what lies beyond the edge of consciousness. But only if you survive the night." A sudden chill swept through the chamber, and the whispers turned into wails, rising in intensity. The figures in the alcoves writhed, as though their bodies were vessels for some unseen force. Shadows danced along the walls, merging and separating in impossible forms. Ilara realized, with a shiver of dread, that this was not merely a punishment of the body, it was a corruption of the soul, a tearing apart of everything that defined the human mind. And then she felt it, a tugging, insistent, relentless, a presence brushing against her thoughts, probing, testing, demanding surrender. Sleep, the very thing she had feared, called to her like a siren. Her eyelids grew heavy despite every effort, her knees threatened to buckle, her mind wavered on the edge of collapse. The emperor watched, his expression unreadable. "Do not yield, Ilara. Hold fast, endure, witness. This is the power of the mind when sleep is denied, and it is only the beginning." At that moment, she understood. The true terror was not in the emperor's command, nor in the death of those who slept. The true horror was what sleeplessness did to the living, the way it twisted perception, stretched time into a tormenting eternity, and left a hollow space where reality once was. And she was standing at the very center of it.
Ella's mind teetered on the edge of collapse, every nerve screaming in exhaustion and fear. She had entered the Emperor's inner sanctum believing herself prepared, believing that her wits, her determination, her knowledge could withstand the horrors she would face. But nothing could have prepared her for the living nightmare that sprawled before her eyes. The alcoves surrounding her were no longer silent. The sleepers had become active participants in a macabre ballet. Their movements were jerky, unnatural limbs twitching at impossible angles, eyes wide and glimmering with a hollow light. Whispered voices coalesced into a chorus of incoherence, sometimes repeating her name, sometimes warning her of unseen dangers, sometimes laughing in tones so human and yet so alien that her stomach churned. Valerius moved among them, graceful and precise, as though conducting an orchestra of torment. His hands traced patterns in the air, and the shadows bent and quivered in response, as if obeying a force beyond the realm of ordinary comprehension. "You see," he said, his voice soft, almost reverent, "this is not chaos, this is evolution. The mind, freed from the chains of rest, becomes something new, something extraordinary. It learns, it perceives, it transcends its own limits." Elara shook her head. "No, this isn't evolution, it's madness. Look at them, they're suffering. They're losing themselves. You're not creating transcendence. You're creating monsters." The Emperor stopped and regarded her with an unsettling calm. Monsters. Perhaps, or perhaps, the monsters were always there, hidden in the shadows of ordinary life. "I simply brought them into the light." A sudden cry echoed through the chamber, cutting through the tension like a knife. One of the sleepers convulsed violently, clawing at the air, their mouth forming silent screams that Elara could almost hear. The shadows around them swirled faster, flickering, twisting, forming grotesque shapes that made her skin crawl. The air was electric, charged with a malevolent energy that pressed on her chest, making it hard to breathe. "Stay with me," Valerius whispered, moving close. "Observe, witness, understand. Only then will you grasp the truth." Elara nodded, her voice caught in her throat. She tried to focus, to resist the pull of exhaustion that clawed at her consciousness. Every fiber of her being screamed to collapse, to give in to the temptation of sleep, but she refused. Her curiosity, her desire to survive, and the raw terror of the unknown propelled her forward. She approached one of the figures. A young woman, her skin pallid and eyes wide, whispered incoherently, "Don't let sleep take you." The words were fragmented, barely coherent. Yet they cut through the haze of hallucinations surrounding Elara. She reached out tentatively, and the woman's hand twitched toward hers, cold and clammy. "It's a warning," Elara muttered to herself. "A warning from what remains of their mind." Valerius smiled faintly. "Yes, and warnings are lessons." The human mind, when stripped bare, communicates in ways that defy conventional understanding. You see only fragments, Elara, but the whole is beyond comprehension. A low hum began to resonate in the chamber, vibrating through the stone walls, through the floor beneath her feet, through the very air she breathed. It was almost imperceptible at first, a subtle undertone to the whispers, but it grew steadily, insistent, commanding, omnipresent. The sound seemed to press directly into her skull, tugging at her thoughts, pulling her consciousness toward a place she did not want to go. She stumbled, gripping the edge of an alcove for support. The shadows twisted again, coalescing into shapes she could not name. Figures emerged from the darkness, more tangible than the hallucinations she had endured earlier. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, mouths opening in silent screams that somehow filled her ears with sound. Elara, the Emperor's voice, calm and commanding, reached through the chaos. Do you understand yet? This is the threshold. Beyond it lies knowledge, power, clarity. If you can endure. The pull of sleep grew stronger, a siren call that whispered promises of relief, of release from the unending torment. Her eyelids felt like lead, her muscles weakened with the unbearable weight of exhaustion. Every rational thought she tried to hold on to wavered, distorted, slipping into a fog of fragmented visions. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the cacophony, a sharp, rhythmic tapping. Deliberate, measured. Elara's eyes snapped open, straining to locate the source. In a shadowed corner, a figure emerged, moving with unnerving precision. Unlike the twisted sleepers around them, this figure was alert, awake, and terrifyingly composed. Valerius observed quietly, a flicker of interest crossing his face. Ah, a participant, one who has endured far longer than most. Fascinating. The figure stepped closer, revealing features partially obscured by shadow. You're testing us, it said, voice low, almost a growl. Do you realize what you've done? We are breaking, fracturing because of you. And yet you watch, fascinated by our suffering. Yes, Valerius replied calmly, because in suffering the truth is revealed. Pain, exhaustion, fear, they strip away the illusions, the comforting lies of the mind, and what remains is clarity, power, transcendence. The figure hissed, advancing, but suddenly faltered, eyes widening in terror. From the far end of the chamber, one of the sleepers had risen, a grotesque, impossible motion that defied natural law. The body twisted in ways that should have been fatal, and yet it moved with intent, a predator of the shadows. Its eyes locked on the figure, and a scream erupted, half human, half inhuman. Elara stumbled backward, her mind reeling. The chamber was no longer merely a room filled with the sleepless, it had become a living entity, a predator in itself. The walls pulsed, the floor seemed to breathe, and shadows danced with purpose, as though the very architecture of the palace conspired to consume them. Valerius stepped forward, calm amid the chaos. Observe closely. This is the natural consequence of my decree. Sleeplessness strips away the veneer of civility, leaving only the raw, unfiltered essence of existence. Fear, desire, madness, they are all revealed in their purest forms. Elara felt nausea rising in her throat. Her thoughts spun, images overlapping, time fracturing into fragments of reality and nightmare. She glimpsed scenes from the city outside streets, filled with citizens staggering in delirium, hallucinations bleeding into their waking world. Shadows moving independently, devouring the unwary. Each vision struck with vivid intensity, a warning of what awaited all who defied sleep. And yet, even in the depths of terror, a spark of determination flared within her. She had to survive. She had to understand it. And if possible, she had to find a way to end this nightmare before it consumed everything. Valerius's voice cut through her thoughts. "Do you feel it, Elara? The hunger of the mind? The desperation? This is the edge of consciousness, the place where reality bends, where the human spirit is tested beyond its limits. Only those who endure can grasp the truths hidden there."
Her eyelids drooped, her body trembling, yet she forced herself to focus. Step by step, she moved deeper into the chamber, observing the horrors around her with a mixture of fascination and dread. Every twitching figure, every whispering voice, every shadow that moved independently, these were all pieces of a puzzle, fragments of the Emperor's ultimate design. And then she saw it, a hidden alcove, partially obscured by darkness, containing a figure unlike the others, calm, composed, awake but with eyes that held a knowledge deeper, darker, more terrifying than anything she had encountered. It radiated an aura of both menace and understanding, a being who had survived the crucible of sleeplessness and emerged fundamentally changed. Elara knew, in that instant, that this figure held the Keitha secret to enduring, perhaps even the secret to confronting the Emperor himself, but approaching it would be perilous. The shadows around it seemed to ripple like water, and the whispers intensified, warning her of unseen dangers. Her heart pounded, her mind teetered on the brink of collapse, and yet she took a step forward, one step, then another. Each movement felt like wading through a storm of madness, each breath a battle against the pull of sleep that sought to claim her. She reached the figure, its eyes met hers, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. A silent understanding passed between them, unspoken recognition of shared struggle, of mutual endurance in the face of impossible odds. And then, without warning, the figure spoke. Its voice was calm, resonant, and filled with an authority that made Elara's blood run cold. "You want to survive," it said. "You want to understand, but surviving is not enough. To endure, you must embrace the darkness within yourself, or it will consume you." Elara's pulse raced. She realized, with a sinking certainty, that she had only glimpsed the beginning of the horrors that awaited. The Emperor's vision, the city's suffering, the restless mind's it was all part of something far greater, far darker than she had imagined. And the night, the endless, sleepless night, was far from over. Elara's heart pounded. In the chaos of the Emperor's chamber, surrounded by the twisted forms of the sleepless, she felt a sudden clarity, a sense that she had finally reached the edge of understanding, the threshold where knowledge and terror intersected. The figure's voice cut through the oppressive whispers of the chamber. "The Emperor believes he controls this world. that he shapes it according to his vision. But he underestimates one truth. No one can defy nature forever, not even him. Elara swallowed hard. Then, how do we stop him? How do we save them? The city, the people. You must confront him, the figure said, and not as one who fears him, but as one who has seen the abyss and refused to fall. Steeling herself, Elara stepped forward. The Emperor had been watching, silent and still, his expression unreadable. But she sensed a change, a subtle tension in his posture, a shadow of doubt flickering across his features. "You are awake," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "But do you truly understand what it means to remain conscious when the world itself is asleep? To see reality stripped bare, to witness the mind unravel? I understand enough. I've seen what sleeplessness does. I've seen the torment, and I've seen what your obsession has cost. It ends tonight." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Ends. Do you truly believe you can end this? I am beyond fear. I am beyond death. Sleep is weakness, and I have renounced it entirely. Nothing can touch me." But Valerius had not accounted for one thing: the human spirit. Exhaustion, terror, and despair had stripped away pretense, leaving raw determination in its place. Elara stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "You may have renounced sleep," she said, "but you cannot renounce humanity. You've taken it from the people, you've tortured them, and you've mocked life itself. Tonight, that ends not with your power, but with the truth you refused to see." The air in the chamber shifted. Shadows seemed to quiver, the whispers of the sleepless rising to a crescendo. The mysterious figure behind her extended a hand, and suddenly the chaos of the room, the twitching bodies, the flickering shadows, the disembodied voices focused into a singular force, a tide of collective consciousness that surged toward the Emperor. Valerius staggered, the first sign of faltering she had ever seen. His obsidian eyes widened as he felt the weight of every sleepless mind in the Empire pressing against him, a force he could not control. The illusions he had crafted, the manipulation of reality, even his so-called mastery of the mind, all of it began to collapse under the combined strength of those he had tormented. Ilara's voice rang out, clear and resolute, cutting through the chaos. "You cannot control them. You cannot control life itself. Your reign of sleepless terror ends now." The Emperor raised his hands, attempting to command the shadows, to bend the chamber to his will. But it was too late. The collective force of the suffering minds pressed on him, and for the first time, Valerius felt fear, real fear, not the calculated fear of enemies or the cautious awareness of citizens. This was raw, elemental terror, the terror of the human mind recognizing its own vulnerability. And then the unimaginable happened. The Emperor's form began to waver, flickering like a candle in the wind. His figure stretched and twisted, the shadows around him writhing violently, with a final shattering scream that echoed across the palace and into the city beyond. Valerius collapsed into himself, vanishing into a void of fractured consciousness. The chamber fell silent. The whispers ceased, the shadows stilled, and for the first time in months, a calm descended. The sleepless, though weak and trembling, began to regain a semblance of control over their bodies. Their eyes, once hollow and unseeing, blinked with life. Elara fell to her knees, exhausted beyond measure, but filled with a sense of victory she had never known. The mysterious figure approached her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have done what no one else could. You restored balance, not with force alone, but with understanding." The emperor's tyranny was rooted in fear and obsession. You met it with courage and clarity, and that is why it is ended. Elara nodded, too drained to speak. Yet a profound sense of purpose filled her. She looked around at the survivors, at the faces of those who had endured the unthinkable, and felt the weight of responsibility and hope intertwined. They were broken but alive, scarred but free. Outside the palace, dawn broke over the city for the first time in months. The streets, once haunted by shadows and hallucinations, now felt alive with the quiet hum of life returning. People began to stir, their movements slow but deliberate, reclaiming the world that had been stolen from them. Elara stepped onto the balcony of the chamber, gazing at the city bathed in the soft light of morning. For the first time, she allowed herself to breathe fully, to feel the warmth of the sun on her skin. She knew the road to recovery would be long, that the memory of the emperor's obsession and the horrors of sleepless nights would linger. But she also knew that humanity's resilience, its ability to endure and to rise above terror, had won. In the heart of the palace, among the silent remnants of the emperor's schemes, Elara made a vow to ensure that no ruler would ever wield fear over sleep again, to guard the sanctity of rest, and to honor the lives of those who had suffered for her victory. The empire would heal, life would reclaim its rhythm, and sleep, that most sacred refuge, would never again be forbidden. For in the end, even the mightiest tyrant cannot overcome the human need for rest, for renewal, for dreams. And in dreams, hope endures.